Hello and welcome back to the Day Luna Human Design Podcast with your hosts, Dana and Shayna. Today we are doing a human design nerd solo episode where we're going to be talking about the first variable arrow. And we wanted to just keep this short and sweet because understanding your top left arrow can be so helpful in how you are structuring your day and your meals and the way that you are consuming content. So it's just kind of like a helpful, fun little place to lean in. A lot of things in human design, it's like leaning in for growth and expansion and awareness and showing up with authenticity. And with the variable arrows, it's almost like this little gift to yourself that just feels like a hug and like so supportive and easy to lean into. And more often than not, you're already leaning into it in this way, but then maybe you think that's bad or you should try to change it up. So just hearing these words can be all you need to just start doing things in a way that really is in alignment for you in your day-to-day life. So when we're talking about variable arrows, what we're talking about is when you look at your human design chart, you're going to see two arrows on the left side of your head, two arrows on the right side of your head. And those are your variable arrows. And the direction that they're pointing, either left or right, is going to tell you if this energy flow, it's very specific for each arrow, is either specific or if it's non-specific and it's flowing and it's open. So we're going to get into that first arrow. If you haven't pulled up your chart and seen which way this arrow is pointing, we encourage you to pull up your chart for free on our website, daylunalife.com. And you're going to look for that top left arrow, which is your determination.
And I think it's worth mentioning before we even dive in that the variable arrows are a deeper and much more specific layer of your chart. Where these arrows are calculated from is actually looking at the sun gates and earth gates and north node gates, and then the line expression. And then even smaller than that, there's a measurement of color and tone. So these are getting into very, very specific, detailed and nuanced layers of your human design chart, which is really cool, right? It's really fun to go deeper because if you're someone who's been in your human design experiment for quite a while now and you've really explored and experimented with your type and your strategy and authority and you're ready to go deeper, this is an amazing next place to go that really brings it into that practical physical level, like Shayna was saying. But if you're new to human design and you're not following your strategy and authority, then these variable informations might not really resonate with you or be that supportive. So if you're brand new to your human design experiment, it might be really fun to still listen to this and to learn about it, but it's always really important to be experimenting with your strategy and authority for some time, at least 6 months up to a year, before you're really ready to dive into this next level of your experimentation that comes from this first variable arrow. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing that I wanted to say is that these very minute and specific calculations in your human design chart are, as they sound, so small, right? So detailed that if in order to really go on this journey with your variable arrow and to start diving into that, you need to make sure that your birth time is completely accurate. Because even if it is a few minutes off, or a guesstimate that your mom gave you or anything like that, you could have these information in your variable arrows incorrect. And it would be, it would feel completely unresonant and it might be really unhelpful to dive into this level. So I wanted to say that make sure that you go track down your birth time on your birth certificate if that's possible. We have a whole episode, I think it's episode 99 on what if I don't know my birth time. And we dive into a lot of suggestions that we like to give if you're having difficulty determining your exact time. But those are kind of my disclaimers before we even dive in. And I did also want to say that if you're really interested in these deeper levels, the variables come from PHS, which is a part of human design, the primary health system side of human design, that gets a lot more deeper into our health and our well-being and looking at our physicality and our brain and our body. And it's really, really fascinating. So if you're interested in nutrition or healing or body work in some kind of way, PHS might be a really fun place for you to dive into. We actually have an entire online course that you can do in one day. That's a PHS like retreat day. You don't have to do it in one day. You can pace it out over time, but we poured our heart and souls into that online course, and it's so fun to be able to share it because it's challenging to find complex information and comprehensive information about all of the PHS system and chart. So that's an amazing resource if you're really familiar with this, or if this is something that really sparks your interest on that deeper side. You can check that out on our website, daylunalife.com.
Yeah. And also, you can just get your PHS chart from us with a booklet explaining all of the different uh, arrows that you have and the categories that go with them and all of the details of how you can really lean into them. If you're not wanting to learn the full PHS system, that's a really great place to just love up your energy and lean into your design in this deeper way. But like Dana said, strategy and authority have to come first. So if you're new, you can listen back to the episodes that we have about strategy and authority and about your type. That's going to be the best place to start. So let's just get right into it. What is the top left variable arrow, and how can you use this information in your life?
Yes, so this first top left arrow represents your determination or your diet, your digestion. It also represents your physical brain. So these two arrows on the left-hand side of your body graph chart, this is on the design side, and that's really going to represent the physicality, right? The design is like our vehicle or our form. So this first left arrow being on the left-hand side really tells us that there is a physical nature here. It's about your physical brain. If you have a left facing arrow as this first arrow, then that means that you have a active brain. And if you have it right facing, then you have a passive brain. Now, there's also on the other side, on the right hand side, the more energetic side, the personality side, you can look at your mind. So there's a difference between having a left facing brain versus a left facing mind. But that's kind of a deeper, confusing layer. Today, we just want to talk about our physical brain. And the reason that we want to start with just this first arrow, your determination arrow, is because this is the first arrow to start with in the variables. There's kind of this transformational unfolding that you do with the variable arrows in a specific order. And this first one, your diet or your determination, but also looking at if you have a passive or active brain, is the first arrow to begin experimenting with, practicing really allowing yourself to live in this flow. And that will kind of unlock the unfolding to the other three arrows in the variable arrow transformational journey. So with this first arrow, if you have it left facing, as we learned, there's like the left brain and the right brain. And you might remember, like in basic science class in like fourth grade, we talk about the brain having two hemispheres. There's like the left hemisphere of the brain that is this very logical and strategic and mathematic energy. And then there's the right hemisphere of the brain that's much more this creative and emotional. It's that same kind of idea, right? That we have either this left brain or this right brain, the flow of the energy in our imprinting comes in with that leftness or that rightness. And that really imprints whether we have a more left energy brain, physical brain, or right energy. So if you have your arrow left facing there, then you're like Shayna. And that means that you have an active brain. And physically, your brain is going to burn more calories because it is really active. And that means that your brain really thrives when you are eating enough calories to support that active brain and to support the calories that are being burnt there. If you have a left facing arrow when it comes to your diet, it's really important that you have structure, that you're eating, at the same times, that you're eating bigger meals throughout the day. It's really important that you're going to have this kind of like structured energy in general with your food and your digestion of not just food, but of life. So anyone with a left facing first arrow here, you might really find that you like to have these go-to foods that you want to eat within the same structures and the same times of day. And that really supports the cognitive function of your physical brain.
Yes. So not skipping meals can be beneficial. Really having those repetitive go-to foods, it really supports your brain to have something to focus on and that active energy to be poured into. So being strategic, having stimulation, this is what kind of feeds that active brain. Your brain is always going to be thinking and like diving into things. So giving it something that's consistent to dive into can be really helpful. So for me, I like to eat the same things for a certain amount of time, and I don't have to then think about what am I going to eat today, because I know I'm going to be eating oatmeal with berries every single morning. Now, it's not so much about being disciplined. That's actually a different arrow. This is more about having that consistency of the things that you're eating, that your go-to. I like to use the word go-to things, um, being like, these are the, the accounts that I follow. And when I meditate, I do these practices. When I read, I go in my room and I read in my bed with this specific lamp. Like, having your go-to practices, your go-to foods, that kind of consistent go-to things that feed and nourish your brain, not just food, but also like your rituals and things like that, your go-to things. When I work out, I always walk on the treadmill and for, an hour, and then I do some Pilates, right? I might have a season where I'm doing that every single time that I work out. Now, I'm not disciplined necessarily where I'm working out every single day at the same time every single day, but more so I am, when I'm going to work out, it's going to be the same workout routine. And that workout routine might change, from season to season or based on what I'm really into. But then I'll get latched onto a new thing that's my go to workout routine or my go to meditation routine, my go to breakfast, my go to lunch and dinner items. But it's not so much about like never changing it. It's about letting yourself really be consistent and stay consistent until it's like, okay, now I want to shift things and change things up. So that strategic left facing energy, it's knowing that when you're trying to be like, let me have variety, let me have change, maybe I should do a different route on my walk today, it can feel actually unsupportive to your physical brain, because now you're having to think about something that you shouldn't even need to be thinking about, because your brain is trying to think about other things that are more important to you. So just kind of leaning into your go-tos, that's kind of the easiest way that I can really say it, that supports me, is not feeling like I need to order something new every time I go to a restaurant. Like, I love the salmon, I'm going to get the salmon. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to look at the menu. I don't have to be like, well, maybe I should try something new. It's like, no, I love the salmon, I'm getting the salmon. There we go. We find a lot of people with this left facing active brain who have their foods and they eat them all the time. They never get sick of them. And that's really right for you. So just kind of owning that and leaning in. And it doesn't mean that you have to force everyone in your family to eat the same things every single day. But for you, it can just be a small act that supports your brain. So that way you can then focus on other things that are more important.
Yeah, and it's really cool and interesting to think about this energy of digestion, because this is very connected to the food we're taking in and the food that we're digesting on an energetic level and the nourishment our brain gets from that. We're just like talking about leftness or rightness here, but if you go deeper into your PHS chart, you go into a whole new chart that just basically zooms into these arrows and you can see further your color and tone. And that's where your human design diet comes from. So for Shayna, she's left facing, and then she has hot thirst as her diet. And then even further than that, the tone is your greatest sense or your cognition. So there's more specific layers than this, but just kind of zooming out and looking at overall, you have this leftness energy with the way that you digest food, but also with the way you digest life, the way you digest information and experiences. It's interesting to think about. We are digesting life around us all the time. The information that we're looking at on our phone, we are consuming just the way that you consume food. And then energetically, you digest it, your brain processes it. So it's really cool to think about, even though this is like the physical side of our body, we're sort of seeing how energetics and physicality interplay with one another. We're seeing that we are energetic beings as well as physical beings, and we need to digest experiences in our life. And if you have this active brain or left facing first variable arrow, then digesting the same things over and over is going to really nourish your overall digestion and flow of not just your food, but of everything that you're digesting. So it's really interesting. I feel like a lot of our conditioning tells us that we need to digest information and meditations and things like that with this more structured routine of like doing the same meditation every single day. And that might not be right for you. But if it is right for you and you have this left facing arrow, you're going to feel so much more creativity and flow open up in your life from having this consistency and structure. So a lot of people we meet, they're like, oh, I have a active, strategic, focused left brain, but I'm so creative. It's like, yeah, of course, there could be tons of other places in your chart that show you how you are creative in what ways. It's just having this go-to routine and structure and consistency there. It's going to nourish your brain so that you can digest things better and open up more creativity in your life. So it's not like a representation of your personality in any way, although you will see tendencies in your life that you can identify. It's so much more like, this is how my physical brain is nourished. And when I'm operating in this way, it's really important, right? Something really interesting with Shayna, I can see in her is like, she is not always remembering to eat. Her brain is so active and it is digesting what it's focused on, right? Because this is a specific and strategic and focused energy. When she's focusing on emails, her brain is digesting those emails and there's like almost like nothing else around her that her brain is taking in. It's just that. So it actually can be quite easy for her to forget like, oh, it's my lunchtime. I need to take a break and eat this lunch that I've been eating every day at the same time during my whole week. It's like she is so focused on something that she can forget to nourish her brain. But since she has an active brain that's burning more calories, it's actually something that is bad for her to forget to eat and to not nourish her brain. It's like her brain cognition could be the first thing that sets off a chain of unease or unwellness in her body or, other problems like that. So it's not that it's necessarily natural for you to just like remember to eat the same things and to be consistent and to not skip meals and to give yourself enough calories. It is actually a practice. And it might not feel natural at all, but once you start experimenting with it, you realize, wow, my brain cognition is having a lot more sustainability. I feel like I'm nourishing myself better and digesting my food better, and also digesting my information that I'm taking in life overall a lot better if you're doing that. And if you have a right facing arrow as this first arrow, then you're like me and you have a passive brain, right? So the exact opposite of all the things of having an active brain. If you have a passive brain and a right facing arrow like I do, your brain burns less calories and it actually needs less food to nourish it. And so it's okay for you to skip meals sometimes. You actually thrive when you're nourishing your brain, when you're eating kind of smaller portions throughout the day more frequently. Like think light and snacky quite often, but also sometimes skipping meals totally. And your brain cognition will not be, undermined by that. It will actually sort of be enhanced sometimes because when you're overeating, your brain is not actually burning all of those calories, and you're not going to be fully digesting things. So just knowing that if you have this right facing arrow, really focus much more on intuitive eating. And instead of like, oh, it's lunchtime, I have to eat, or oh, it's breakfast time, I have to eat this thing. Of course, there's also this energy here with right facing of variety. So when it comes to the foods that you're eating, you might really want to have a lot of variety, and that's going to be something that supports you versus having that same go-to breakfast every day might really feel off for you and like not very supportive. And the same thing, digesting information, digesting meditations, digesting life itself. If you have a right facing arrow here and a passive brain, you need that variety. That is what nourishes and stimulates your brain. And it's so interesting for me having this and being able to compare Shayna and I together. I really notice that if I'm forced to eat the same foods every day, I just feel so mentally trapped. It almost makes my brain like freeze or hiccup or something like that, where I'm like stuck on, oh my gosh, I have to eat the same food again. Like to be honest, when we're at our retreats and we're eating at the same place every day and we're going in and we're doing the same, like it's similar foods, It's hard for me. That is something that does not, I've been experimenting for so long with like having variety and allowing myself to have that. And that variety piece, I will say, is something that feels very natural for me. Like it's not something that I've had to really practice. It's more something that I've allowed. But when I feel like I have to have these go to things time after time, it really feels off. It feels just like instead of flow in my whole daily life and in my digestion of life, it feels like there's a kink in the road that almost like constricts or tightens the energy and blocks my creativity. So it's really interesting how that very physical side can have such a influential energetic repercussion. And when you have a passive brain, right facing brain, your brain, instead of taking in things in a focused manner, like Shayna's with her left facing brain, it's like you're really focusing on that specific thing. And then that's what your brain is taking in and digesting. If you have it right facing like me, your brain is really taking in things like receptively with no filters. Everything around you, it's digesting and absorbing and taking in. And even though it's passive and it's burning less calories, it's this like, autopilot, like flow state where things are just naturally sinking in without even really having to be running the machine. It's just receiving things within. So, knowing that is really important. There is no way to make your brain focus on only taking in the things you're focused on. That's not how your brain works. Instead, you need to know that you're going to be absorbing everything around you. Your brain is going to be absorbing everything around you, and your empowerment there is by creating filters. So for me with a passive brain, I'm always really thinking about what are the movies I want to watch, the documentaries I want to watch, the podcasts I want to listen to, the media that I want to consume or digest, and putting those filters on. Because if I even see it in my peripheral, if I walk past a newspaper, my brain is unconscious to me digesting that, right? Because this is the physical side, it's also the unconscious side, if you will. So it might not be your mind thinking thoughts of I'm digesting that newspaper headline that I'm seeing in the corner of my eye, but physically your brain is taking that in, receiving it, and processing it. So being just discerning about what you put in your environment is something that can be really supportive.
Yeah. So being really choosy with the accounts that you follow on Instagram, that or like on social media in general, that can be a huge just relief and weight lifted off of your passive brain because you know every time you open this app you're going to be absorbing all of the things, but it's accounts that you really enjoy and that you really value and that you trust versus just a mess or a chaotic frequency of all of the things on the internet all of the time.
Yeah, and I never look at my for you page that has like things that other people follow, because it is just even me seeing it once, I feel like my brain digests it, and that was something that I fed my brain without even intentionally doing that. I'm
See, whereas
curious.
for me, I'm
Yeah.
always on my For You page. That's the main place that I'm at.
That's
And
so funny.
I know. And it's because I can see a post and like just really be focused on it. And then like, boom, my brain's going to focus on something else. It's not still in my field. So I like
Right.
to think of these energies with the arrows. Like if it's specific, it's like this funnel that is upside down, if you will, where the smallest part of the funnel is at the top and it's taking in specific information and then it's funneling it down to that larger part and it can like be gone, right? Like I can eat that, no, like, oh, I'm eating the same thing every day and like, boom, I'm free, right? I'm taking in this content and like now it's gone because I'm now taking in more content through that small funnel where or that small end of the funnel. And if you have a passive brain, you have a normal facing funnel where the wide end is at the top and the small end is at the bottom. And you're taking in all of this information and now it's sinking in and it's taking up space and it's working its way down to the bottom of the funnel. And now it's coming through and it's like too much, right? You can't control the fact that your funnel is wide and receptive, but you can put a filter above or around the funnel where you're not allowing just any and everything into your physical brain. You are really setting yourself up for success. Now, variety is really good because if you just have like one thing always streaming through that wide end of the funnel, it's just going to be full of that one thing and feel really boring and bland
Mhm.
and plain. So that's why if you eat the same thing every day, like you put a bunch of oatmeal in that funnel and it's just there, it's like, this is it. This is all that life is. It feels boring. It feels unhelpful. It feels unhealthy versus you have a bunch
Uninspiring.
of like today it might be this, tomorrow it might be that. And it feels really supportive and inspiring and helpful. So the funnels actually really help me, maybe because I have a specific brain. It's giving me a visual to latch onto, but have no understanding like, oh, okay, I can let that shit go really quickly. And for Dana, it takes a little bit longer because she's absorbing that plus a bunch of other things that she's observing. And they're all being mixed into this like pot and getting eventually out the other small end of the funnel.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, I'm a quad right. All four of my arrows are right facing, which is like a whole nother story. But if we're just talking about having a right facing determination arrow, I do notice that variety is something that just brings me so much life. Like I feel my brain working when I have variety to digest. And when am digesting the same thing, it just, my brain feels so like uninspired that it almost like halts to a stop. And so, what that looks like in my day to day life with meditations that I do, with workouts that I do, with spiritual practices that I do, even with books that I read. I am almost never reading one book at a time until I'm done with it, literally ever. I'm always bouncing around from maybe like a handful of books, like 3 or 4 books at a time. And I'll read like an excerpt from this one, or I'll read in the morning this day, but in the sunset afternoon on another day. And with my meditations, I have go to meditations that I do. Like I really like to practice Kundalini yoga. I really like to chant and play like music and sing and stuff as a meditation. I really like to do free writing and connect with my spirit guides. Those are my main three. I also have other things that I do too. Like I really like working with Robert Grant, and he has a show on Gaia where you can look at sacred geometry and do these different visualizations with sacred geometry around your body. So I have like these handful of meditations that I do all the time, but I'm bouncing in between each one. And maybe sometimes I will do the same one for a couple days in a row, but it's never like the go-to thing that I'm doing for months on end when I show up to meditate, sort of the way Shayna is. You know, she really has like her one specific thing or maybe her two, and she really goes back to those for like years at a time sometimes. And for me, I'm always cycling through handfuls of things, even with working out as well. I have several different things that I like to do when I'm working out. And that's just what nourishes my brain to kind of have that sort of stimulation. So playing with that is something that is really fun and freeing. And I also wanted to say that I mentioned with Shayna having this active brain that needs more calories because her brain burns more calories, but she kind of can forget actually to give her brain those calories because her mind is focused on something. Me being the opposite, I've also noticed, you know, the opposite is true for me. So what that means is that my brain needs less calories to function overall. But I have really latched on to the conditioning that like you have to eat breakfast before you start working and you have to eat lunch at a specific time. Like otherwise you're going to crash in the afternoon. And through learning this about my human design chart, I actually initially felt like that's not true. I need food in order for my brain to work. That was my first thought. And then I was like, well, it's in my chart. Let me just experiment with it. Let me see what it feels like to be eating less big meals throughout the day and more light and snacky, and also to actually check in. Am I wanting calories right now? Or am I not? And it was through the experimentation that I realized how many conditioned stories I had around when you eat and what you eat. So I really wanted to share that because I'm a freaking human design specialist. And even I had so much conditioning around that. But through experimenting, you know, after living my design for some time, when I was ready to experiment and I wanted to on my own volition, then experimenting, I could really see, wow, this actually is more supportive for my mind. And now I've found that when I, especially lunch, and breakfast too. If I'm make myself eat big meals, and give myself a lot of calories, it is so hard for me to digest those calories and then have continual brain cognition function to go back to work. Whereas instead, if I'm eating really lightly, like literally just a couple of bites of something at lunch, my brain feels so sharp and like I can really continue digesting information and using my cognitive function. So I wanted to share that personal experience because I think that experimenting is really important. And especially with food and our bodies, we have so much deep conditioning around food and around nutrition and around how we should be eating. It is so deeply ingrained in us that we don't even realize it's there. And only through experimenting, when we're actually in a state of personal alignment, can we start to really see what's true for us. And I say that because, like, if you're experimenting with this, but you're not in personal alignment, you're not going to find your own true results for your body. You have to be in that aligned place first and then experiment with it and sort of see for yourself. So I invite you to do that. And I'd love to hear how that goes for you.
Yeah, it's really fun seeing how we're so opposite, and
Mm-hmm.
how it shows up in our day-to-day life. Like even hearing you talk about on retreat, and every morning there's like the breakfast buffet, and it's typically the same items. Like that's my favorite part of going on vacation and staying at a resort where there's a breakfast buffet, because it's like I know that there's going to be the same, eggs, or the same watermelon or fruit plate or yogurt, or like I know that those same exact things are going to be there. Now, in this example, like when I travel with my husband, he has a right facing arrow like Dana does. And so he'll get something new every breakfast, but I'm like literally eating the exact same thing I ate the day before at this breakfast buffet because I literally want it. And if they switch it up and they don't have it for some reason, I literally feel now my brain is thinking about like, should I reach out to them? Should I ask them?
Yeah, I know. It's so funny. And for me, I do the same as Brian. I mean, we have literally the same diet. We both are nervous touch, but we both have this right facing arrow here. And for me, I'm always trying to create as much variety as I can. But even just seeing the same food out every day is my brain gets stuck on it and it doesn't feel supportive for me. And it's not, it's just, I think it's really fun to know these deeper layers of yourself because most of the time in your life, you're really able to live according to this. And when you're in a family unit, I feel like it's so empowering to have these differences and to honor them. And it really takes your whole human design experiment to that next level.
Yeah. And even with music, right? Like I will listen to the same song over and
Yes.
over and over and over again for like months.
And you'll
And
listen to the same playlists of
over,
songs for
yes,
years,
years,
like
years
3 or 4 or 5 years.
or more.
And it's
Yeah.
like every day when you put on that playlist, you put on the same playlist that has the same songs you've been listening to for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So I'll hit shuffle. Um, but like I know that every song that's gonna play, nothing's gonna be like surprising or new, or like I'm gonna get the same frequency that I want. And whereas my husband Brian and also Dana, like they're always listening to new songs. My husband's always putting on his like DJ on Spotify that's like, here's something new. And I'm like, I don't want to listen to any of that. I want my shit. Right. So it's just so funny to see the differences and to lean in. And it's, this isn't a place that we always judge ourselves. Sometimes it is, right? Like I should have that variety, or I should be more strategic and more consistent, not have to think about, you know, what I'm going to wear or what I'm going to eat. That's another place that I really see this show up. Like, when we talk about, I think it was like Steve Jobs or someone who wears the same, like their closet is just the
Turtleneck.
same shirts, the same pants, the same underwear, like super simple minimalist. And I'm like, that is it. I love that. I would wear the same thing every single day. And I do tip like a lot of the time
Mm-hmm.
because I just don't, it takes up too much brain space for me to be thinking about like, oh, what should I wear today? Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. I wear basically zero jewelry because it's too much of my brain's energy to have to figure out what jewelry matches what outfit and how they match. Whereas for Dana, it's like a great joy of like the variety of like this necklace and this ring with this flow and these colors and this different hairstyle. Like I've literally had the same hairstyle my whole life. I've never changed it. It's either up in a ponytail or it's down. That's it. So
Yeah, same
it's
part,
just,
same everything, which we're
yes.
kind of, I think we're sort of extreme examples in those ways because we have been living in alignment for so long and following our strategy and authorities for so long. We can see it like even more clearly. Like if you're listening to this and you have a right facing, digestion arrow and you're like, well, I like listening to the same songs sometimes. Like, so do I sometimes. But overall, I can really see where that variety actually creates stimulation in my brain and helps me digest life. And overall, I have go-to things that I wear like Shayna does and my go-to robes. And sometimes I like it to be minimalist and easy, but definitely overall, I feel that variety does spark my brain's digestion. I feel like more energy in my brain to be creative and think when I am engaging with that variety. Whereas Shayna feels more energy in her brain to be creative and think when she has those specific go-to things and that consistency there and doesn't have to think about it. So it's really fascinating to look at once again, like the energetics and then how does that interplay in our life?
Yeah. And even, sorry, last thing this made me think of is even how I do specific routines with people. Like when I hang out with friends, my mind always goes to we're going to go eat and we're going to go chat over food and drinks, and that is like I don't have to think about it. I just know they're coming over. That's what we're going to end up doing. And I don't have to think like, well, maybe we should go for a walk. Maybe we should go for a hike. Maybe we should go to the beach. Maybe we should just veg on the couch. It's like, gosh, that takes up so much room in my brain where it's like my go-to thing is we go to either this restaurant or this restaurant and we eat and we talk and we have some drinks and that's it. But that doesn't necessarily flow for the other people in my life who need variety and who thrive on that variety. So
Yeah. Like me, I'm
there's,
like, we're going this again, like we did this last time. And
yeah,
and for me, it's like, okay, well, let's go on a hike, or like let's do craft night, or let's play music this time, or let's go camping because we've never done that before. Like that variety is something that my brain naturally really gravitates towards.
yeah. And so it's knowing that it's okay to be different and it's also okay to do different things at different times. And a lot of times because of our relationship, or if you're in relationship with somebody who has different arrow than you, it'll expand you into, okay, yes, let's go to the beach. And then I'll get hooked on every Friday night. I go to the beach with my husband and we will go to the same beach and we walk in the same, like have the whole same routine or ritual. So you can definitely expand it. It's just knowing like this is how your brain is designed to work. And this is maybe why things might feel challenging or might feel supportive or unsupportive. And honestly, it becomes really fun when you start to observe it in your life. And then you let down the judgment of like, oh, okay, we don't have to be the same. We can be different. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. This is such a fun conversation. I love getting to share. I love when Shane and I are opposites in something because it's just really fun to get to explore it firsthand and in our relationship with each other. Like it's one of my favorite things that I'm a defined emotional and she's undefined, or that I'm have all of this right facing arrow here and she has the left facing. It's really cool to see those differences, and then they feel like something that you can really celebrate and doesn't feel like, oh, why am I doing this again? Or I don't know how to communicate it. You have the languaging behind it to be able to express your needs and to meet in the middle to celebrate your differences. So we love to hear if you have a right facing arrow here and you have a passive brain like me, or if you have a left facing arrow and you have an active brain like Shayna, let us know on our Instagram at DayLuna. We would love to hear if this resonates with you and how you feel about the different things we talked about with food and with meditations and with music, even, and with wearing clothes. We want to see if this is something that you've experimented with, or if it lands for you, or if it's something that you're just starting to explore. And if you're wanting to dive more into this, we actually do talk about the four variables in our human design reader training, just like our standard reader training on our website, because we wanted to empower people who are giving readings to make sure that they know enough about every aspect of the chart to be able to give a good reading. So we do dive into it in our human design reader training. But if you want to go even further and learn about all of the different arrows and the colors and the tones that are associated with the four variable arrows, it is so fascinating and such a fun, deeper layer. So remember that we have our PHS reader training as well on our website. All of that you can find on daylunalife.com.
Thank you for tuning in with us today. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to follow along and learn more about human design.